The night air in Babylon feels almost heavy, as if it is carrying the dust of the day that passed. You are already awake. The stars still hang above the rooftops made of baked mud, glimmering faintly through a soft haze that smells of clay and river reeds. Somewhere in the distance, a donkey brays, and the sound echoes through the narrow street like a slow reminder that dawn is near. You sit up from your straw mat, rub your eyes, and stretch your arms until the joints crack softly in the silence. The room around you is dim, lit only by the faint orange glow from the embers of last night's fire. For a moment, you listen. The city has its own heartbeat. A distant splash from the canal, the gentle rustle of palm fronds outside, the faint breathing of your younger brother asleep beside the wall. All these sounds tell you that life never truly stops in Babylon. It only changes its rhythm. Your body feels sore, but you are used to that. A weaver, life bends often, and your hands are marked with small cuts where the threads have bitten your skin. You glance toward the corner where your loom stands waiting, a wooden frame that looks almost alive in the half-darkness. Soon, the day will begin again, and you will start the long dance of thread and shuttle that feeds your family and clothes the city. Tonight, you are standing at the edge of time, in the middle of a world both ancient and familiar. The stars above shine over a city older than memory itself. The smell of smoke and sweet oil drifts from the hearth. Somewhere a rooster cries out, impatient for dawn. Most people would not last 5 minutes here, but for you, this life is rhythm and comfort, a pattern that never ends. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, lower the lights, let the fan hum quietly, and settle your breathing as we drift together into tonight's journey. You step outside into the courtyard. The stones are cool beneath your feet. The moon is a faint smear of silver over the ziggurat, and the air smells faintly of the Euphrates. The city walls stand tall in the distance, their shadows meeting the pale horizon. Somewhere, a temple bell gives one hollow ring. You can feel the hum of life waking up beneath it all, quiet and steady. You walk past the clay jars that line the wall, each filled with wool, flax, or dye. The textures are rough under your fingers. Some fibers are soft and warm, others dry and stubborn. These are your materials, your daily puzzle. Each thread must be chosen carefully, each strand balanced against another, until the pattern holds together like the very streets of Babylon itself. Historians still argue whether Babylonian weavers worked under temple control or free households, but your day is clear enough. The temple takes most of what you make, and in return it grants food and shelter. It is a trade of comfort and obedience, an arrangement that has lasted for centuries. You light a small oil lamp, its flame trembling in the wind. The walls shimmer golden for a moment, and your loom looks taller, almost proud. You sit down and trace the wooden beams with your fingers, feeling the marks your father carved long ago. He taught you how to keep the tension even, how to listen for the soft snap when a thread gives way, how to keep patience even when your hands grow numb. Outside, the first blush of dawn touches the sky. It is pale and wide, like a bowl of milk turned upside down. The scent of baked bread floats from the neighbor house. A child laughs somewhere far away. The world is stirring again, and so must you. You take the spindle, roll the thread tight, and begin the first pull of the day. The loom answers with a soft creak, as if greeting you back. Your shadow stretches long across the ground. The light catches the edges of the threads, turning them gold. You can hear the river in the distance now, a slow whisper of water against stone. The same river that carries reeds for papyrus, fish for supper, and maybe, just maybe, stories of other weavers who begin their mornings the same way. The rhythm begins, soft and endless, as the city slowly wakes around you. The light of dawn spills gently into your small courtyard, painting the mud brick walls in pale gold. A thin layer of dust floats in the air, catching the first rays of sun like drifting threads of silk. The courtyard is small, shaped like a square pocket hidden between houses. The floor is covered in worn stone, uneven from years of footsteps. Along one side stands the tall frame of your main loom, and beside it a few clay pots filled with dyes and rinsing water. This is your workshop, your world. It smells of wool, ash, and the faint sweetness of pressed flax oil. You begin your morning routine with a deep stretch, then reach for the water jar. The surface ripples as you pour a little into a shallow basin and splash it over your face. The chill wakes you fully. Your apprentice, a boy named Nabiam, stumbles in through the archway, rubbing his eyes. He mutters a greeting, half a yawn, half a word. He looks barely awake, but already guilty for it. You do not speak. You only point at the pile of reeds and loose threads waiting by the corner. He knows what it means. He kneels down and begins sorting them, pulling out the good strands from the frayed ones. The soft rustle fills the quiet morning. A few pigeons land on the low wall nearby, cooing and pecking at crumbs from yesterday's supper. The sounds mix into something peaceful, almost musical. The first thing you check each morning is the tension of the warp threads. Those long vertical strands stretched tight on the loom. They must be perfect before you begin, because one uneven pull can ruin an entire day of work. You run your fingers along them slowly, feeling the smooth and the rough, adjusting a few with small pegs of wood. The rhythm of touch and check is calming, almost meditative. Historians still argue whether Babylonian looms were large upright frames or smaller horizontal ones. In truth, both existed. Your family uses the upright kind, the type that allows the weaver to stand or sit for long hours while the sun shifts overhead. It is heavy and creaks when you move it, but it has served 3 generations of your family. The markings carved into its wood tell stories, names, dates, even a small drawing of a bull that your father once carved when he was drunk and proud. Your mother steps out briefly, carrying a tray of flat bread and lentil stew for later. Her hair is tied with a cloth, and her eyes are still sleepy. She gives you a small smile, the kind that says everything is fine, even when it is not. The economy has been harsh this season. The temple demands cloth for rituals. but the traders are slow to pay. Still, she believes in work, in rhythm, in the way the gods reward patience. You do too, though sometimes it feels like patience is all that remains. The boy sneezes suddenly, sending bits of dust flying into the air. You scold him gently, telling him to cover his face next time. He grins sheepishly and returns to sorting the reeds. You shake your head but cannot help a faint smile. The same thing happened to you when you were his age. Your master back then had a loud voice and a heavier hand, but you learned quickly. Babylonian weaving is not only about skill, it is about discipline. Threads teach patience better than any priest can. As the sun rises higher, the courtyard fills with warmth. You hang a piece of cloth across the open side to block the glare. The shadow it casts dances lightly with the breeze. In the corner, a cat has found its place near a pile of wool scraps, curling up without a care for the day ahead. You envy it for a moment. You begin spinning fresh flax into thread. The fibers are pale and coarse, but as your fingers twist them together, they grow smoother. You dip them lightly in oil to keep them from fraying. The spindle hums quietly as it spins, a soft drone that could lull anyone into a trance. The boy hums too, a tune from the market, something about a merchant who fell in love with a spice seller. You have heard it 100 times, but let him sing. It keeps the pace. A scholar once wrote that Babylonian weavers were the poets of the city, for they worked in rhythm and pattern, like writing a story on fabric. You like the sound of that, even if you never learned to read. Your story is written in threads. Your ink is the dye, and your book is the cloth stretched before you. Each line you weave tells of another sunrise, another meal, another small victory over time. The day grows warmer, and the air smells faintly of the river. You pause for a drink of water and glance over the wall toward the alley. A woman carrying clay pots passes by, her sandals kicking up dust. A cart creaks in the distance. Somewhere, a temple bell rings again, softer this time. Life moves around you, unhurried, ancient, the same as it has always been. A quirky old rumor drifts through your thoughts, something your grandfather used to say. He claimed that the gods could see the patterns woven into every piece of cloth, that the designs acted like messages to the heavens. A crooked thread might anger a spirit, while a perfect weave might bring blessings. You never knew if he meant it as a joke or a warning, but you still find yourself double-checking the tightness of each knot, just in case the gods are watching. By now, the courtyard hums with steady work. Nabium's pile of reeds has grown smaller. The spindle spins without pause. The cat twitches its tail in its sleep. You lose track of time easily here. The light shifts from gold to white as the sun climbs higher, and the sounds of the city grow louder beyond the walls. The day is in motion, and you are part of it. One thread in the great weave of Babylon. By the time the sun is fully awake, the courtyard has changed from gold to heat. The smell of warm clay rises from the walls, and the air begins to shimmer faintly. You pull your stool closer to the shade and bring the baskets of fibers toward you. They are your raw material, the base of your entire world. Soft wool from sheep herded near the river valley, pale, brittle strands of flax harvested by calloused hands outside the city walls. Together, they will soon become something new, something with purpose and color. You reach into the wool first. It is rough, still tangled with bits of grass and dirt. You shake it out gently, watching small specks drift through the sunlight like floating dust. Nabium, your apprentice, sits beside you, still rubbing his eyes, but finally working with both hands. He teases the flax fibers apart, muttering about how they scratch his skin. You tell him to be patient. Good fiber never comes easy. The process is long, and that is what makes it peaceful. First, you comb the wool with a pair of wooden cards, brushing in opposite directions until it becomes soft and straight. The sound is rhythmic, a dry whisper like reeds rustling in the wind. Then you twist small handfuls together, rolling them between your fingers, feeding them to the spindle as it turns. The motion repeats until your body remembers it better than your thoughts. The spindle hums, the loom creaks softly, and your breathing settles into that same quiet rhythm. The flax needs more attention. It is stubborn and brittle, and one careless pull can break the strand. You soak it in a bowl of water, the surface catching tiny circles of light. As the fiber softens, you feel it loosen between your fingers. It is smooth now, almost silky. You pull it through the comb again and again, each time finer, lighter, more obedient. You smile slightly. The trick is not to fight it, but to listen. Historians still argue whether Babylonian weavers imported Egyptian flax or grew it locally along the canals. The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. The Euphrates Valley was fertile enough to grow its own, yet merchants always brought exotic goods to Babylon, and flax was no exception. You sometimes imagine that a single thread in your hand might have come from a plant watered by a completely different river far away. It gives the cloth a secret, one that only you will ever know. As the morning grows hotter, your mother appears again with a jug of barley water. She pours a cup for you and another for Nabium, warning him not to spill any. He drinks half of it at once, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. You take smaller sips. The liquid tastes faintly sour, cool and earthy. It settles the dryness in your throat. There is a strange comfort in this repetition. Your hands move with steady certainty. The fibers change shape under your touch, and time feels slower, kinder. You think about the people who will wear this cloth, priests, merchants, maybe even a noblewoman from the palace district. None of them will ever think of you. They will see the color, the shine, the softness, but not the hands that made it. You do not mind. Your work speaks quietly. A small breeze moves through the courtyard, carrying the scent of baking bread and something else, the faint odor of sheep dung. Nabium wrinkles his nose and laughs. You tell him that everything has its use, even the unpleasant. Sheep dung, when mixed with ash and water, makes a surprisingly good bleaching agent. He stares at you, unsure if you are joking. You are not. The ancients discovered strange secrets by accident, and weavers keep most of them close. You pick up a handful of dyed wool from the basket near the wall. The colors are uneven, a mix of soft red, faded yellow, and pale green. Babylonian dyes come from strange sources: roots, bark, crushed stones, and sometimes even insects. The smell is not pleasant, but it means beauty later. You run your fingers through the colored strands and imagine the finished cloth hanging under the market sun, rippling like water. The work goes on quietly for hours. The courtyard hums with life, the distant chatter of women drawing water, the call of a street vendor selling fish, the faint creak of carts rolling over the stones. Time folds in on itself. You cannot tell whether you have been sitting here for 1 hour or 5. The shadows stretch and move, marking the slow turning of the day. Nabium begins to sing again, softly this time, a tune about a caravan lost in the desert. You listen without comment. His voice wavers like the threads, sometimes off-key, sometimes perfect. You think of how many hands like yours exist across the city, spinners, dyers, potters, all caught in the same rhythm, each believing their work holds the world together. Perhaps it truly does. Then comes a small interruption. A sparrow swoops down and lands on the loom, bold as a merchant. It pecks at a bit of loose thread, hopping sideways as if claiming it. Nabium tries to shoo it away, but only makes it hop closer. You wave your hand gently, and the bird finally flutters off, leaving behind one stray feather. You pick it up, smooth and grey, and tuck it behind a jar. Maybe it will bring luck. The sun is high now, and the air feels heavier. You take a deep breath, your fingers stilling for a moment. The threads lie stretched in front of you, shining faintly in the light. Each one carries a story of the sheep that grew it, of the fields that fed it, of the river that cooled it. You are only one part of that story, one link in a chain that began long before you and will continue long after. A scholar once said that weaving is not work, but a form of memory. Every pattern is a record of the hands that made it, the lives that touched it, and the days spent in silence. You think that might be true. The threads remember everything, even what people forget. You roll the finished spindles into a bundle, tie them with a strip of cloth, and set them aside. The morning is ending. Soon the merchant will come to check on your progress, and the day will change pace again. For now, though, the courtyard is calm, and you can feel your heartbeat slowing to match the rhythm of the loom. By midday, the courtyard hums like a quiet hive. The air is warm and filled with the faint perfume of flax oil, crushed reeds, and dust. The first threads are ready, each one spun and smoothed, lined neatly beside the loom. You take your seat again, setting the bundle on your lap. Nabium sits across from you, his hands fidgeting, eager to begin the part he enjoys most, the weaving itself. You tie the warp threads, one by one, across the wooden frame. They stretch tight, glinting faintly in the sunlight, like the strings of an instrument. The sound they make when plucked is soft but clear, a quiet hum that only a weaver hears. You test the tension with a practiced ear, adjusting a few pegs, tapping the frame until it feels alive again. Then comes the shuttle, a slim piece of wood, smooth from years of use. You wind the newly spun thread around it and push it gently through the gap between the warp lines. It slides cleanly across. You pull the beater bar forward to press the thread tight. The loom answers with a low, wooden thump. Then again and again, the rhythm begins. It is a heartbeat, a pattern that never ends. Push, pull, tighten, slide, tap, adjust. The sound fills the air like quiet music. Nabium watches you closely, his eyes following the shuttle. After a few passes, you hand it to him. He takes it nervously, glancing up to see if you are watching. Of course you are. His movements are clumsy at first, the threads uneven, the pull too strong, but he improves with every motion. His rhythm steadies. Soon, the loom sings again. Historians still argue whether weaving in Babylon was seen as a craft or a sacred duty. The temple scribes wrote about looms blessed by priests, while clay tablets from merchants describe it as simple trade. For you, it is both. The rhythm feels holy. Each strike of the beater bar sounds like a prayer answered by the wood. The motion steadies your thoughts, clears them. It is meditation without silence. The cloth begins to grow. A few inches, then a handspan. The pattern emerges, pale lines crossing darker ones, a soft diamond shape repeating like ripples in water. It looks simple, but it takes years to master. The temple prefers plain patterns for ceremonial robes, claiming the gods dislike vanity. Yet merchants always ask for something richer, something that looks as if it cost more work than it truly did. You know how to please both. Nabium stops to wipe his forehead. His arms tremble slightly. You tell him to take a breath, then guide his hands back into rhythm. You show him how to let the shuttle glide rather than force it, how to listen for the small creak that tells him the thread is tight enough. His focus deepens. The two of you fall into the same pace, and for a while it feels as though you are one creature with four hands, breathing and working in time. A thin breeze pushes through the courtyard. The cloth ripples faintly, and the light shifts across it, turning the colors warmer. You pause for a moment, resting your hands on your knees. The silence between motions is heavy but pleasant. You can hear the distant city again, a cart rolling over the street, a woman calling for her children, a dog barking at something unseen. The sounds belong to another world. Here, inside the courtyard, time moves differently. You pick up a tool from the side, a small bronze comb used to fix uneven lines. The metal is cold against your fingers. You press it gently through the threads, separating, aligning, smoothing. The pattern strengthens. You find a small knot in the fabric and sigh. A mistake, barely visible, but you see it. You tug the thread carefully until it sits flatter. Nabium watches in silence. You do not need to tell him why. He already knows that the gods see every crooked line. Then a small flash of humor enters your mind. You remember an old story your father told you that long ago. A weaver once made a robe so perfect that the goddess of weaving herself grew jealous and sent moths to eat it. Since then, every weaver must leave one hidden flaw to keep the gods satisfied. You wonder if that story was invented by someone too tired to fix their mistakes. Still, the thought makes you smile. You tell Nabium about it, and he laughs until his shoulders shake. The sound feels good in the warm air. A clay tablet once found near your described a weaver who could finish an entire bolt of cloth in a single day. Scholars argue if such speed was possible or exaggerated. You think it must have been a boast. No true weaver rushes. Cloth takes time, like bread or faith. You cannot hurry patience. As the hours pass, the pattern expands, layer upon layer, until the fabric hangs like a soft curtain of light and shadow. You step back to look at it. The sight always feels the same. Quiet pride mixed with disbelief that something so delicate came from your own hands. Nabium wipes his hands on his tunic and stares at it too, his expression half awe, half exhaustion. The sun has shifted now, pouring its light through the upper cracks of the wall. You move a small cloth screen to block it. The shadows turn long and calm again. The rhythm slows as your arms grow heavy. Even the loom seems to sigh. Its creak slower, its heartbeat softer. A small insect crawls across the wooden frame. You flick it away gently. The world narrows again to just the cloth, the shuttle, and the steady sound of the loom. Nothing else matters. The rhythm continues, timeless, the same as it was 1,000 years before you, and the same as it will be 1,000 years after. The last thread of the row slides through. You pull the beater bar one final time, then rest your hands. The fabric hangs complete up to your waist, shining faintly with sweat and sun. You nod once, satisfied. Nabium yawns quietly, his eyelids heavy. You hand him a cup of barley water. He drinks it and grins. You pat his shoulder. The loom stands tall before you, silent again, the day's rhythm slowly fading into stillness. Beyond the courtyard wall, you hear the faint call of a merchant. Soon it will be time for trade, talk, and gossip, but for now, you allow yourself one small pause, watching the cloth sway lightly in the warm air. The heat of the afternoon settles across Babylon like a soft weight. The city hums with its usual midday rhythm, merchants calling from their stalls, donkeys stamping their hooves on the dry ground, and children laughing near the canal. Inside your courtyard, the loom rests. Its wooden frame creaks quietly as it cools in the sun. You stretch your back and brush the fine dust from your forearms. The morning S-work has left faint red lines across your skin from where the warp threads rubbed. Nabium yawns loudly, pretending to stretch just like you. He glances toward the gate, restless, hoping you will let him go to the market. You nod once, telling him to return before the shadows grow long. He runs off barefoot, his laughter echoing against the walls. For a few moments, the courtyard feels too quiet without him. You sit down beside the loom and take another sip of barley water, letting it roll cool against your tongue. Then comes the sound of footsteps in the alley. A man's voice calls softly through the doorway. You recognize it at once. It is Yurusu, the cloth merchant, who always arrives when the sun is high and everyone else is hiding from the heat. He steps inside, brushing dust from his robe. He has the usual look of someone who spends his life surrounded by bargains, eyes that never stop moving, hands that never rest, and a smile that always hides a calculation. Still working miracles with thread, he says, half greeting, half jest. You shrug. He walks over to the loom, running his fingers lightly over the new cloth. His rings catch the light. Fine weave, he says. Tighter than last season. The temple will be pleased. You thank him, though you know his compliments always come before a low offer. He leans closer, sniffing the cloth like a man judging wine. Then he frowns slightly, still using the red dye from Mari. He asks, you nod. He shakes his head. Too expensive. There is a cheaper one now, brought by a caravan from the east. Same shade, or so they claim. I will bring you a sample. You do not answer right away. Cheaper usually means duller, and duller means a customer's complaint. But you let him talk. Merchants thrive on being heard. He sits down on the low stool by the wall and begins his usual string of stories. Half gossip, half rumor. He tells you that the high priest ordered new ceremonial cloth for the coming festival, enough to dress 10 idols in the temple. He says the palace has demanded silk from distant lands, though none in Babylon have seen real silk before. He claims that a scribe was caught smuggling temple linen to the market. His punishment still under debate. And then he lowers his voice and adds, they say the king himself has been watching the Weavers' Guild. There are whispers of taxes. You raise an eyebrow. Taxes always come like storms, unexpected and loud. Urasu shrugs, as if it means nothing. Perhaps it is only talk, he says. Still, you might wish to finish your orders quickly. He smiles again, but it is thin now. Historians still argue whether Babylonian markets were controlled by the palace or left to local trade. The clay tablets show both truths at once. Merchants like Urasu walk between those worlds, too clever for the priests, too bold for the guards, always balancing on the edge of favor. You respect him, though you would never trade lives with him. He deals in coins and gossip. You deal in patience and thread. He opens his pouch and pulls out a small roll of fabric from another weaver's shop. Competition, he says, smirking. You examine it. The weave is uneven, the dye too dark, but it is larger than yours. He watches your face closely, waiting for envy. Instead, you laugh softly. Too heavy, you say, it will sweat through before the gods even see it. He chuckles, pleased by your honesty. Then he leans back and begins to talk again. This time of faraway things, a caravan lost near the Persian Gulf, a foreign trader who sells blue dye made from crushed shells, a ship that sank in the Tigris carrying barrels of oil. Some of it might be true, some not. It does not matter. The sound of his words fills the hot air like a song of distant winds. You listen because it breaks the stillness. Every city thrives on stories. Babylon's streets are paved not only with bricks, but with rumor. People trade tales the same way they trade grain and copper. You wonder how many times your own name has been mentioned in one of those tales. Perhaps as a master of cloth, or perhaps as a fool who overcharges for linen. Both versions probably exist. The merchant stands and dusts his hands. I will return tomorrow, he says. If the temple gives me their order, you will have work for a month. He pauses, lowering his voice again. There is also talk of new guards being stationed at the gates. They say a thief has been stealing bolts of cloth at night. He smiles. Lock your loom tight, friend. He leaves the courtyard with a half bow, his sandals kicking dust into the sunlit air. The sound of his footsteps fades into the noise of the city. You sit for a while, listening to the faint echo of the marketplace, traders shouting prices, goats bleating, the splash of water buckets, the laughter of children chasing each other through the alleys. It feels far away, but close enough to taste. You pick up a half-finished thread from the ground and twirl it between your fingers. The city is full of people like you, working quietly while others shout their names to the crowd. You do not need the noise. Your work will speak long after the merchants' stories fade. Still, you find comfort in those whispers, in knowing that somewhere beyond the walls, life moves just as it always has. As the heat begins to soften, Nabium returns, carrying a small bundle of fruit and a grin that tells you he spent more time listening than buying. He starts talking at once about a musician at the market, a fight between two potters, a dancer who balanced a jug on her head. His excitement fills the courtyard, and you let him talk without interruption. He is young. The world is still wide for him. You cut a piece of cloth from the loom, roll it neatly, and set it aside for Urasu's next visit. Then you stand, stretch, and look toward the western sky. The light is already changing, the shadows long and orange. The day is not over, but it is turning. You can feel the rhythm of the city slowing, settling into the quiet pulse that always comes before evening. The loom waits in silence again, ready for its next song. The evening light turns the courtyard into gold. The sun hangs low above the city walls, and long shadows stretch across the stone floor. The loom stands ready again, half covered in the glow of the setting day. Nabium sits cross-legged beside the dye jars, poking a stick into one of them. The smell of earth and minerals fills the air. It is time for the most delicate part of your work, the creation of patterns. You unroll a thin strip of parchment from the shelf, marked with faint symbols and lines. These are the sacred patterns approved by the temple scribes. Each one carries meaning. The zigzag of lightning for the god Adad, the spiral for Ishtar, the wave for Ea. The symbols are not random decoration. They are protection, prayer, and offering, all at once. A robe with the wrong symbol could insult a god. A perfect one could invite favor. Nabium looks at the parchment with wide eyes. Do the gods really care what pattern we weave? He asks. You smile faintly. They care about order, you say. A world without pattern would fall apart. He thinks for a while, then nods, though his expression shows he is not fully convinced. Historians still argue whether the sacred designs were dictated by priests or developed by the weavers themselves. Some tablets suggest that certain motifs appeared long before temples claimed them. You suspect the truth is simple. People found beauty first, and priests later gave it meaning. That is often how faith grows. You begin to trace the first design on the cloth using a piece of charcoal. The lines are light, barely visible, but enough to guide your weaving. Nabium watches carefully, his hands hovering as if afraid to disturb the air around you. Once the sketch is ready, you thread the shuttle with dyed yarn, red for fire, blue for water, white for purity. The colors shine faintly under the fading sun. As you weave, the pattern begins to emerge. Small diamonds appear, then stretch into waves. It looks like ripples on the river when the wind passes. The sight calms you. Every motion has purpose. The threads cross perfectly. The pattern grows steady. The sound of the loom fills the courtyard again, soft and regular, like a chant. Your mother enters quietly, carrying a bowl of lentil stew and 2 flat breads. She places them near you and pauses to watch the fabric. It looks like the river, she says softly. You nod, still working. The river gives everything, she adds, even patience. Then she leaves as silently as she came. A faint breeze stirs the dye jars, sending small ripples across their surfaces. You catch the scent of crushed indigo, sharp and earthy. Babylonian dyes are a wonder in themselves. Some are made from roots and bark, some from crushed minerals, and a few from strange insects found along the marshes. The process is complex and often unpleasant, yet the result color that lasts for years feels like magic. A quirky piece of lore comes to mind, one that always makes you smile. It is said that the goddess Ishtar once spilled her own blood upon a cloth to make the first crimson dye. The color was so bright that mortals tried to copy it forever after, never quite matching it. You do not believe it, but you whisper a small prayer anyway, asking her to keep your hands steady. The cloth grows longer. The pattern now stretches across the loom, vibrant but still soft. Nabium hands you fresh spindles as needed, his movements careful. The rhythm is steady, each sound blending into the hum of the city beyond the walls. Somewhere, a flute begins to play. You can almost see the temple rising in the distance, its steps catching the last light of day, its top reaching into the sky like a finger pointing toward the gods. You wonder if one of the priests will wear this very cloth during the next festival. The thought brings a strange feeling, pride mixed with distance. You will never see the ceremony, yet a part of you will be there, moving through the crowd, shimmering under torchlight. That is enough. As twilight deepens, Nabium begins to grow sleepy. He leans against the wall, blinking slowly. You tell him to rest for a while, that the loom will keep its rhythm without him. He nods and curls up beside a pile of wool, asleep within moments. The courtyard falls into silence, except for the creak of wood and the occasional rustle of wind. The moon begins to rise over the rooftops. Its pale light touches the fabric, turning the colors cooler. You pause to look at it. The patterns seem to shift under the silver glow, alive for a brief moment. You think of how many weavers before you have watched the same sight. Hands aching, eyes tired, hearts steady. The work never changes. Only the names do. Historians write about kings, wars, and laws, but rarely about the hands that made their clothes. Yet those hands carried the memory of the city. They shaped the textures of everyday life, wove prayers into fabric, and turned patience into beauty. You are one of those hands, and in the quiet that feels enough like immortality, the loom slows. The last thread of the day passes through. You press it gently, then tie the loose end, securing the pattern in place. The fabric hangs heavy, glowing softly in the half-light. It is perfect, or as close to perfect as mortal hands can make it. You brush your fingers across the surface one last time and whisper, "May the gods find it pleasing." Nabium stirs in his sleep, mumbling something about bread. You smile faintly, cover the dye jars, and set the tools aside. The sky above Babylon is now a deep blue, scattered with early stars. The loom stands quiet again, a faithful companion resting after a long day. You lean back against the wall, close your eyes for a moment, and let the sounds of the city fade into the steady rhythm of your breathing. The sun has reached its highest point in the sky, turning Babylon into a glowing maze of stone and dust. The heat presses down like a heavy blanket, and even the pigeons stop moving, hiding in the shade of the temple walls. The work for the morning is done, and your stomach reminds you that it has been hours since dawn. You set the shuttle aside and roll the half-finished cloth over the loom to keep it clean. Nabiem, still half asleep, blinks and stretches like a cat. "Time for food," you say simply, and he grins in relief. You fill a small basket with what little the house offers. Flatbread, a few dates, a piece of dried fish, and a jar of barley water. Your mother hands you a small clay pot of lentil stew, still warm from the hearth. She tells you to eat in the shade and to bring the boy back before sunset. You promise, though she knows you would not miss the afternoon shift. The two of you step out into the street. The light hits you like a wave. Dust glitters in the air, rising from every footstep. Babylon's streets are narrow, lined with high mud brick walls that trap the warmth. The scent of cooking oil and sweat mixes with the faint sweetness of figs drying on rooftop racks. You walk quietly, the boy skipping ahead, too full of energy for the heat. The canal is not far. It cuts through the city like a shining ribbon, carrying both water and life. Without it, no field would grow, no dye would mix, no clay would soften. You find a shaded spot beneath a palm tree near the bank where reeds sway in the light wind. The water glimmers brown and silver, moving lazily toward the river. You sit, setting the basket between you. Nabiem dives in eagerly, tearing the bread and dipping it into the stew. You eat slower, chewing each bite with quiet satisfaction. The taste is simple but good. Earthy lentils, salt from the fish, the soft sweetness of dates. The barley water is warm now, but still soothing. Across the canal, a group of farmers rest on the bank, their donkeys drinking noisily from the water. They talk loudly, their laughter carrying easily across the surface. One of them waves in greeting, and you lift your cup in return. Life here is close. Everyone knows the rhythm of everyone else's work. A gentle breeze moves through the reeds. The sound is calming, a whisper of rustling stalks. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the air against your face. The heat does not seem so heavy here. Nabiem lies on his back, chewing the last piece of bread, staring up at the sky. "Do you think the gods ever get hot?" he asks suddenly. You chuckle softly. "If they do, they probably sit in the shade like us." He nods thoughtfully, satisfied with that answer. A small fish jumps near the surface, leaving a ripple that spreads in widening circles. The pattern reminds you of the one you wove earlier. Simple, endless, always returning to its center. Historians still argue whether the canals of Babylon were the work of one great king or built slowly by generations. To you, it makes no difference. The canals are as natural as breath itself. They are the veins of the city. Without them, even the grand ziggurat would crumble into dust. You notice a few children playing farther down the bank, splashing water and laughing. One of them holds a small clay pot and fills it again and again, pretending to trade it for pebbles. A miniature market. You smile at the sight. It reminds you of your own childhood, when you would weave toy baskets out of reeds and sell them for nothing but kind words. The breeze brings a new smell, faint smoke from someone's cooking fire. You inhale deeply, enjoying the simple comfort of it. The city is alive in every scent, every sound. Even the flies buzzing around your meal feel like part of the same rhythm. Nabium swats one lazily and sighs. "Master," he says, "do you ever wish to go somewhere else? Maybe to Susa or Akka?" You look at him, then at the wide canal that leads toward the river. Every thread travels farther than the hands that made it, you say. That is enough. He frowns, not quite understanding, but lets it go. You remember being young like that, thinking that adventure was the only way to find meaning. Now you know that peace hides in routine, in repetition, in the slow work that never ends. A dragonfly lands on your basket, its wings catching the light like colored glass. Nabium tries to touch it, but it flies off, skimming low over the water. You both watch it disappear into the reeds. You take one last sip of barley water, then rinse your hands in the canal. The water feels cool and smooth. The mud beneath your feet is soft, pressing between your toes. The river carries everything away, dust, sweat, and thought. You stay silent for a while, listening to the murmur of life all around. A passing boat breaks the stillness. Two men sit aboard, rowing slowly with wide paddles. The boat is filled with baskets of dates and jugs of oil. One of them calls out an offer to sell, but you wave him off with a smile. Nabium waves back eagerly, nearly tipping over the basket. The men laugh as they drift away. The sun begins to lower slightly, softening the light. Shadows stretch across the water, and the surface glows like bronze. You stand, brushing the dust from your knees. Nabium groans, but follows. The work waits, as it always does. You start walking back through the alleys. The city's pulse growing louder again. The clang of hammers, the low chant of temple prayers, the hum of traders' voices. As you near the courtyard, the smell of dye greets you, sharp and familiar. You set the empty basket aside and glance at the loom. The unfinished fabric hangs patiently, a reminder that the day is far from done. You feel the strength return to your hands as you take your seat again. The canal fades from your mind, leaving behind its calmness, like cool water flowing quietly through the corners of your thoughts. By the time you return from the canal, the sun has begun its slow descent. The air feels softer, though still heavy with the smell of warm clay and dye. Nabium hums a song as he sweeps the courtyard, his broom scratching lightly against the ground. You settle again beside the loom, running your hand across the unfinished cloth. The texture feels smoother now, each thread catching faint glimmers of gold light. Then comes a sound that makes Nabium stop mid-tune. A knock on the gate, slow but deliberate. You glance up. Few people knock like that. The sound carries the weight of authority. Nabium looks at you with wide eyes, already guessing who it might be. You wipe your hands on a cloth and walk to the gate. Standing outside is the temple overseer, a man named Bela. He wears a white robe edged with blue thread, and around his neck hangs a clay seal marked with the temple crest. His face is narrow, clean-shaven, and his eyes miss nothing. Behind him, 2 assistants carry tablets and scrolls, ready to record whatever they see. "Good afternoon," craftsman Belatu says in a tone that is both polite and impossible to argue with. "I trust your work continues as promised." You bow slightly and gesture for him to enter. Nabium scrambles to clear a stool and move the dye jars aside. The overseer steps into the courtyard, glancing around as if measuring every shadow. His sandals leave faint prints in the dust. He goes straight to the loom. The fabric catches the last light of the day, the patterns gleaming softly. He leans close, inspecting the weave. His fingers glide along the cloth, stopping here and there to tug at a thread. He nods once, which could mean approval or simply acknowledgement. "Tight," he says. "Straight. You have not lost your touch." You thank him, keeping your voice calm. He moves to the corner where the dye jars rest and points at one. Still using indigo from the marshes, he asks. You nod. He sniffs the air lightly. "Good. The temple priests complain when the colors fade. The gods, they say, dislike dullness." Historians still argue whether these inspections were for quality or control. The tablets never say which mattered more. You suspect it was both. The temple wanted fine cloth for its rituals, but it also wanted to remind craftsmen that nothing in Babylon truly belonged to them. Not the thread, not the tools, not even their time. Belatu sits, motioning for his assistants to open their tablets. One begins to read from a list, his voice flat and precise. 2 bolts of cloth for the temple of Marduk by the end of the week. 3 for the household of the high priest before the next moon. 1 for the shrine of Nabu, patterned with the sign of wisdom. He looks up. Can you meet these requests? You calculate quickly. The loom can handle 1 cloth every 2 days, if Nabium keeps pace. You nod. Belatu gives a small, approving smile, the kind that never reaches his eyes. Good, he says. You will be paid in grain and oil, as before. He pauses. However, there is one new requirement. He gestures to the assistant, who unrolls a small parchment. On it is a new pattern, intricate and unlike any you have seen. This is for the high altar, Belatu explains. The priests claim it was shown in a dream. The design must be exact. No deviation. You study it carefully. The pattern twists like a labyrinth, lines crossing and looping with strange symmetry. It will be difficult, but not impossible. Nabium leans closer, frowning. It looks like a snake, he whispers under his breath. You nudge him lightly with your foot, but Bella too has already noticed. He raises an eyebrow. A snake, perhaps, but a holy one. The serpent of the underworld, who guards the waters beneath the earth. The priests will wear it during the cleansing rites. His tone makes clear that the explanation is not for debate. You nod again, tracing the lines with your finger. The pattern is demanding, but you feel a small thrill beneath your calm surface. It is not every day that a craftsman's work touches the altar itself. Bella too watches your face, perhaps sensing your pride. Do not let your ambition outpace your skill, he says softly. Perfection pleases the gods, but arrogance does not. You bow your head. I understand. He stands, smoothing his robe. Good. The temple expects the first piece within 3 days. He steps toward the gate, pausing once more. Oh, and one more thing. There are rumors of theft near the canals. Keep your gates locked. The city watch is stretched thin. He glances around the courtyard one last time, then leaves with his assistants. Their footsteps echo down the narrow street until they fade completely. The silence that follows feels heavier than before. Nabium exhales sharply. He scares me, he says. You smile faintly. He scares everyone. You return to the loom and unroll the parchment again. The new pattern gleams faintly under the light. It feels alive, almost moving when you stare at it too long. You begin to imagine how it will look in red and gold, shining on the altar steps during the festival. The thought fills you with quiet purpose. Nabium pokes at one of the dye jars, still uneasy. Do you think the gods really see every mistake? He asks. You look up from the pattern and meet his eyes. I think the gods see effort, you say, and sometimes that is enough. He nods, slowly, comforted by that answer. The courtyard settles again into the soft rhythm of the evening. Somewhere beyond the walls, a drum begins to beat, marking the coming festival. You can almost feel the city preparing, the smell of incense, the sound of prayers, the promise of noise and color. You take up your spindle once more, roll fresh thread, and begin marking the cloth where the new pattern will start. The lines flow like water under your fingers. The temple may own the cloth, but the design, the work, the rhythm, those still belong to you. As the last of the sunlight fades from the courtyard, the loom catches one final gleam of gold. You rest your hand on the wood, feeling its warmth. Tomorrow will be harder. The pattern will test your patience and your skill, but tonight you allow yourself one moment of quiet pride. The city breathes beyond the walls. The overseer's words linger faintly in the air, but they no longer weigh you down. The gods may demand perfection, but it is the weavers who give shape to their dreams. The next morning begins before the sky turns pale. You rise to the soft whisper of the wind moving through the alley. Stretch your sore arms and feel the faint stiffness that always follows long days at the loom. Nabium is still asleep, his face half buried in a pile of wool. You leave him there and step outside into the quiet dawn. The city is calm now, only the distant call of a bird and the faint rumble of a cart somewhere near the canal. You fill a clay bowl with water from the jar and wash your face. The chill wakes you completely. Today is dye day, the most colorful and dangerous part of your work. The overseer's new pattern demands precision, and that means the colors must be perfect. You light the small clay furnace in the corner of the courtyard and place 3 jars beside it, 1 for red, 1 for blue, and 1 for gold. Each contains a world of smell and mystery. By the time Nabium wakes, rubbing sleep from his eyes, you already have the fire steady and the pots warming. He yawns loudly and begins grinding lumps of mineral pigment on a flat stone. The sound is gritty, slow, and steady. Dust rises, staining his fingertips crimson. He sneezes, then laughs. You hand him a wet cloth and tell him not to breathe too close. The first color is red. It comes from the madder root pulled from the soil weeks ago and left to dry. You crush it, mix it with water and oil, then strain it through a fine cloth. The result is a liquid that gleams like blood in the light. The smell is strong, earthy, and sharp, almost metallic. Nabium leans over it, curious, until you warn him that one careless drop can stain his hands for days. Next is blue, the most prized of all. True blue is rare in Babylon. Most come from crushed stones, lapis if you are lucky, or from indigo plants if you are not. You mix the powder carefully with salt and vinegar, stirring slowly until the water turns the color of twilight. The surface shimmers faintly, as if it hides some secret. Historians still argue whether Babylon's famous blues came from imported stones or local plants. The truth, you think, is that every color carries a little of both earth and sky together. Finally, the gold. It is not real gold, of course. Real gold belongs to the temple and the palace. This one is made from yellow clay mixed with a resin that gives it a soft glow. Under the sun, it shines just enough to fool the eye. You test it on your fingertip and smile. It catches the light exactly as you hoped. The courtyard smells alive now. Smoke, heat, dye, and the faint sweetness of oil. Nabium fans the fire while you lower the first skein of thread into the red jar. Steam rises instantly, curling through the morning air. The color spreads through the water like a secret blooming. You stir slowly with a wooden stick, watching the thread darken and change. It is hypnotic, the way color grows from nothing. A quirky tale comes to mind, one your grandmother used to tell. She said that each color has its own spirit. Red is proud, blue is calm, yellow is jealous, and black is hungry. If you anger them, they fade too soon or stain unevenly. So you must treat them like guests, not servants. You whisper a quiet apology to the red as you lift the thread out of the jar. It drips slowly, glowing under the light. Nabium stares in awe. The dyed threads hang from a wooden beam to dry. Drops fall onto the stones below, tiny circles of color that look like painted coins. You work in silence, one jar after another, each batch different. The heat rises, sweat drips down your neck, and your arms ache from stirring. But the sight of the threads drying fills you with satisfaction. Babylon itself seems made of color. The painted walls of the temples, the glazed bricks of the gates, the bright robes of priests. Every shade carries meaning, just like every thread carries work. Nabium begins to hum again. His voice drifts lazily with the smoke. "Do you think colors exist in the heavens too?" he asks suddenly. You smile, maybe brighter ones. Ones no mortal has ever seen. He grins, liking that answer. By midday, the courtyard looks like a small rainbow trapped between walls. Red, blue, gold, and white all sway gently in the warm wind. You sit back, wiping your forehead. The sight brings a strange calm. There is something eternal in this, the act of giving dull fibers a new soul. Historians write about kings and their conquests, but rarely about the people who gave their world color. Yet, without the weavers, Babylon would be dull as clay. You think of the Ishtar Gate, with its deep blue glaze and golden lions. Perhaps some of your ancestors mixed that same shade, staining their fingers the same way yours are now. The thought fills you with quiet pride. When the last thread is hung to dry, you and Nabium eat a quick meal of bread and onions. The food tastes better when eaten among color. He points at a drop of dye on his arm. "It looks like a mark from the gods," he says proudly. You nod, "Then you should not wash it off." In the afternoon, you begin weaving again, carefully introducing the new dyed threads into the pattern the overseer ordered. The colors blend like river currents, red crossing gold, blue curling beneath white. The serpent design emerges slowly, twisting its way across the cloth. It feels alive, as though it might start moving if you look long enough. The rhythm of the loom returns. The clack and pull, the creak of wood, the hiss of the wind, each sound falls into perfect balance. Nabium feeds you spindles, one after another, his small hands steady now. He has grown under your watch, just as the cloth grows under the loom. As the sun lowers, the light in the courtyard turns orange. The threads glow like fire. The air smells faintly of smoke and metal. You stop for a moment to stretch your back and look at the cloth. The serpent's body coils perfectly, its head forming where the red and gold meet. You feel a small shiver of satisfaction. Outside, the city hums. Merchants shout the day's final prices. Children chase each other through the alleys. Somewhere, a priest's chant drifts from the temple steps, slow and low, like a heartbeat. The same rhythm, always. The same pulse that drives you to keep weaving long after the sky darkens. When the last light fades, you tie the loose ends and let the loom rest. Nabium sits cross-legged, staring at the finished section as though it were a living thing. "It looks like it could crawl away," he whispers. You laugh quietly. "Then let us hope it crawls toward the temple, not back here." The boy grins. The two of you sit for a while in the cooling air, watching the last of the steam rise from the dye jars. Above you, the first stars appear, faint and flickering. You lean back, your hands stained red and blue, and think how every color in Babylon once passed through a weaver's fingers. By the time the last rays of sunlight slip behind the rooftops, the day's heat finally begins to fade. A faint breeze drifts through the narrow alleys of Babylon, carrying the smell of baked bread, roasted fish, and warm clay. Nabium tugs at your sleeve. his eyes bright. "Master, can we go to the market?" he asks. You pause for a moment, glancing at the loom, the threads still drying on their poles. They will be safe for the night. You nod once, and his grin grows wide. The streets are alive by the time you step outside. Lamps made from clay hang from doorways, their tiny flames swaying in the wind. Merchants shout their final bargains, calling out the day's last chances. The sounds overlap the bray of donkeys, the creak of cartwheels, the distant splash of the canal. The city feels older and younger at once, timeless in its rhythm. You move slowly through the crowd. The air hums with voices, music, and laughter. Nabiam darts ahead, stopping at a fruit stall where a woman sells pomegranates and figs. You hand over a small coin, and she wraps 2 figs in a strip of palm leaf. "From the northern orchards," she says proudly. You thank her and hand one to Nabiam, who bites into it and hums in delight. Everywhere around you is color, jars of dye powder stacked in neat pyramids, cloth bolts hanging like banners, baskets filled with spices and herbs. The smell of cumin, cinnamon, and smoke makes your head light. You pass by a group of potters showing off their wares, each one eager to prove their clay stronger or brighter than the next. One of them recognizes you and waves. "Weaver, I saw your cloth hanging at the temple steps last week," he calls. You nod modestly. It is strange. You think how fame travels quietly, even among craftsmen. A musician sits near the corner, playing a lyre. The sound is soft, low, and full of warmth. The notes roll like water, flowing through the crowd. Beside him, a young boy beats a small drum in uneven rhythm, smiling each time he catches up to the tune. Nabiam stops to listen, swaying slightly to the music. You give him a coin to drop in the musician's bowl. The man nods in thanks, never missing a note. Historians still argue about how Babylon sounded after dark. Some claim it was quiet, the people resting after long labor. Others say it pulsed with life well into the night. Standing here, you think the second must be true. The market is full of motion, sellers folding up their mats, children chasing stray goats, priests buying incense for tomorrow's rituals. Life moves in slow waves, never truly ending. You stop by a stand selling pigments and oils. The merchant, an older man with a long white beard, recognizes you instantly. "You are the weaver from the eastern quarter," he says, smiling with only half his teeth. "I have something you might like." He reaches under his table and brings out a small sealed jar. The lid is marked with a faded sigil. "Imported from the western hills," he says. "Powdered stone. Makes a blue brighter than the gods themselves." You raise an eyebrow. "Brighter than the gods. That is a dangerous boast." He chuckles. "If it were not dangerous, it would not sell." He cracks open the jar slightly, and you peer inside. The powder gleams faintly, even under the dim light. Nabiam's eyes widen. You hand back the jar with care. "Not today," you say, "but soon." The merchant nods, knowing you mean it. The sound of drums grows louder now, echoing through the square. You follow it to a small circle where a group of dancers perform near the steps of a ziggurat. Torches flicker in the air, their flames bending with the rhythm. The dancers move in slow patterns, their robes flowing like ripples of color. The crowd claps softly in time. You stand at the edge, feeling the beat travel through your chest. Nabium watches, mesmerized. It looks like weaving. He whispers. You smile at that. He is right. The dancers cross and circle like threads on a loom, each movement a line in a larger design. The music swells, rising and falling like a living thing. You find yourself swaying too, your tired limbs remembering the rhythm from your work. When the performance ends, the dancers bow and the crowd disperses slowly. The air now smells of sweat and sweet incense. A priest passes by, sprinkling water from a bronze bowl and murmuring blessings. You lower your head as he walks past, though his eyes never leave the crowd. The city feels sacred and ordinary all at once, every sound and scent carrying a trace of devotion. A young boy with a basket approaches, offering small clay charms shaped like fish and birds. Nabium insists on buying one, so you give him another coin. He picks a bird charm and holds it up proudly. For good luck, he says. You nod, thinking how even luck in Babylon must be crafted by someone's hands. You walk back through the alleys as the market begins to fade. Lamps are being extinguished. Voices grow softer, and the air cools. The city never truly sleeps, but it slows, exhaling after a long day. You pass a group of guards patrolling near the canal, their armor catching the moonlight. One of them greets you by name. You return the gesture and keep walking. When you reach home, the courtyard feels calm and still. The dyed threads hang in the moonlight, glowing faintly like strands of fire and water. Nabium yawns, his eyes heavy. You tell him to sleep. He curls up near the wall, holding his clay bird charm against his chest. You smile, then turn to the loom. The fabric waits, silent but alive. You touch the edge of it, running your fingers across the serpent pattern. The colors shift faintly under the moon. You think of the merchant's stories, the musician's song, the dancer's rhythm. The city feels alive inside the threads, every sound and shadow woven into them. You sit quietly for a while, breathing in the still air, listening to the faint hum of distant drums fading into night. Historians sometimes call Babylon the city of noise. But here, in your courtyard, the noise feels like a lullaby, a heartbeat that never stops. You close your eyes, feeling the rhythm settle in your chest. Tomorrow, the work begins again. Night has fully arrived over Babylon, and the courtyard glows softly in the warm orange of the oil lamp. The moon has climbed high, pale and distant, shining faintly over the rooftops. You can hear the city winding down, a final cart rolling over stone, a dog barking once, then silence. The air is cooler now, carrying the smell of smoke and cooked lentils from nearby homes. Inside your small house, your family gathers around the fire. The space is simple, just clay walls, low stools, and a single shelf where jars of grain and oil are kept. Nabium sits cross-legged beside the fire, still clutching his little clay bird. His hair is messy, his eyes heavy with sleep, but he fights it bravely. You settle down near them, your back resting against the wall. The warmth seeps into your tired muscles. Your mother ladles lentil stew into small bowls and hands one to each of you. The food smells earthy and rich. Nabium begins eating immediately, spilling a bit on his knee. Your mother clicks her tongue, but her eyes are smiling. You take your first bite slowly. The stew is thick, flavored with garlic and crushed dates. It tastes like home. On the other side of the fire, your younger sister sits weaving a small basket from reeds. Her fingers move quickly, the rhythm calm and sure. She glances at you and says, "You worked too long again." You shrug. "The overseer came," you say. "There are new orders." She nods, but does not comment further. She knows that weaving means more than duty. It is the thread that keeps your world together. The flickering light paints shadows on the walls. The patterns look almost like cloth lines and curves that twist in endless shapes. You watch them for a while, your mind drifting between thoughts. The work, the dye, the overseer's sharp eyes, the market's noise, all fade into the background hum of the night. Your mother begins telling a story, the same one she always tells when the nights grow quiet. It is about a weaver who fell in love with a goddess of the sky. Each night he wove a ladder of golden thread, hoping to reach her. But when he finally climbed high enough, the goddess turned into the morning star, and he was left holding only light. Nabium listens with wide eyes, as if hearing it for the first time. You smile faintly, knowing that the story is older than anyone alive. Historians still argue whether such tales began as myths or as lessons for craftsmen. You believe both are true. Stories are another kind of weaving threads of memory pulled together into shape. Your mother's voice grows softer as she speaks, and the fire pops quietly. The flames reflect in her eyes, making her look younger for a moment. A small pot sits beside the hearth, filled with scraps of wool from the day's work. Your mother uses them to stuff cushions or patch old tunics. Nabium picks one up and begins tying knots in it, pretending to make his own cloth. He holds it up proudly, showing a tangled mess of thread. "For the gods," he says, grinning. Your sister laughs so hard she nearly drops her basket. You ruffle his hair and tell him it is perfect. The cat, which spent the day sleeping in the courtyard, wanders in now, brushing against your legs before curling up near the fire. Its fur glows orange in the light. Your mother murmurs that cats bring protection, that the gods send them to guard the home. You nod, though you suspect the cat simply enjoys warmth more than holiness. A sudden gust of wind slips through the doorway, making the flame flicker. The shadows dance wildly across the walls, twisting like living threads. "Do not fear," she says softly. "The wind carries old spirits, but they only visit. They do not stay. Outside, faint music still drifts from the market, someone playing a flute far away, the tune carried by the wind. The rhythm feels familiar, like the loom's voice at dusk. The world has its own steady beat. one that never stops, even when everything seems still. Your sister finishes her basket, tying the final strand neatly. She sets it beside the wall and leans back with a sigh. "Tomorrow I will sell it at the canal market," she says. "The merchants' wives always need new baskets." You nod approvingly. "They will buy it," you say. "Your work is steady." She smiles quietly, proud. Nabium begins to nod off at last, his head falling against your shoulder. His small breaths are even and peaceful. You take the empty bowl from his lap and set it aside. The fire has burned low now, glowing red rather than yellow. Your mother covers the pot with a lid. Your sister stretches her arms, and the house falls into that comfortable silence that comes only when everyone is safe and tired. Historians may write about Babylon's great towers and conquests, but they rarely mention this: the warmth of an oil lamp, the smell of lentil stew, the quiet laughter shared after a long day. This, too, is the city's life. Not the noise of the king's court, but the hush of small homes like yours, where light flickers gently against clay walls. You lean back against the wall, your eyes half closed. The cat purrs softly, the wind sighs through the doorway, and the flames sink lower still. Nabium's charm slips from his hand and lands on the floor beside you. You pick it up and place it near the hearth, where it glows faintly in the last bit of light. The night deepens. The stars above Babylon shine through the open roof, countless and steady. You take a slow breath and feel peace settle deep inside your chest. The day was long, but it was good. The loom will wait for you, the work will continue, and the city will wake again. The fire flickers one last time before fading to embers. The smell of smoke lingers like memory. You close your eyes. The night grows quieter and sleep comes softly, carried by the warmth of the hearth and the steady breathing of your family. You lie on your mat, eyes half open, watching the faint shimmer of starlight through the roof opening. Nabium sleeps nearby, still clutching his charm, while your mother and sister rest close to the fire. The cat purrs in its corner, the sound low and endless. Babylon outside your walls has fallen silent. Only the wind moves now, brushing past the clay bricks like a whisper. You close your eyes, but your thoughts drift toward the wider world, toward the roads beyond the city, the rivers that wind through deserts, and the caravans that carry your work to places you will never see. You picture the cloth you finished yesterday, folded neatly in the merchant's cart, already on its way to some distant market. In your mind, you follow it. The cart rolls through the city gate at dawn, the guards half asleep as they wave the merchant through. The wheels creak softly on the hard ground. Beyond the walls, the world stretches open, full of dust, horizon, and endless sound. The Euphrates glitters like a silver serpent, guiding the road southward. The smell of reeds and river mud fills the air. You can almost hear the calls of boatmen echoing from the water. The merchant drives past farmers bent over their fields, past herders leading their flocks toward the high pastures. The cloth lies hidden under a blanket, safe from dust, its colors unseen but shining still. Perhaps by next week it will reach Sippar or Kish. Perhaps it will travel even farther, to Susa, to Mari, or to the coast where ships wait for the wind. Historians still argue whether Babylonian weavers ever saw their work beyond their city. Some say no, that the merchants kept the routes secret. Others claim that master craftsmen were sometimes invited to travel and demonstrate their skill to foreign courts. You like the second story better. In your dream, you imagine yourself among those travelers. The road changes in your vision. You are walking beside the caravan now, your hands brushing against the cartwheels. The air smells of spice and leather. Traders laugh around a campfire, roasting flatbread on sticks. Someone plays a reed flute, the notes rising high and clear into the night. You listen, smiling. The rhythm of the tune feels like weaving, forward, back, crossing, turning, always returning to the start. You imagine the caravan reaching new lands, where the air is saltier, where the markets smell of foreign flowers and sea fish. There your cloth is unrolled before strangers. They touch it with curiosity, their fingers tracing the serpent pattern, their voices full of surprise at how fine the threads feel. They bargain, they argue, they pay. The cloth becomes part of their lives, a robe for a merchant, a drape for a shrine, maybe even a gift for a noblewoman in a faraway palace. You picture it catching light in rooms you will never enter. That is enough. A quirky story comes to mind, one that Urasu the merchant told you once. He said that some pieces of Babylonian cloth were traded so far that one ended up wrapped around a statue in a temple across the sea. The locals did not know where it came from, but they called it the cloth of dreams because of the strange snake pattern that seemed to move under the light. You smiled when he told you, thinking he exaggerated as always. But tonight, you want to believe it. The dream deepens. You are now on a ship, the first you have ever seen. The deck rocks beneath your feet, and the sound of waves fills your ears. You see rows of jars filled with oil, baskets of grain, and bolts of your own cloth stacked in neat piles. The wind smells like salt and wood. A sailor shouts a command in a language you do not know, and the sails rise like wings. You feel the ship move forward, cutting through the water. The horizon stretches wide, golden with the setting sun. For a moment, you imagine all of Babylon drifting behind you, the ziggurat fading into mist, the canals shrinking into silver lines, the voices of merchants and priests fading like distant songs. Yet, even here, far from the city, the threads you wove remain. They carry a part of home with them. Each one is a memory twisted tight, a piece of your time preserved. But you think it ruled through connection, through every thread, every pot, every story that left its gates. Each object was a messenger, a silent witness that carried the soul of the city wherever it went. The dream shifts again. You are back in the courtyard, your loom standing tall in the golden light of dawn. But the colors on the cloth have changed. They shimmer with impossible shades. Blues that glow like stars, reds that move like fire, gold that seems alive. The serpent pattern rises slightly, almost breathing. You reach out to touch it, and it feels warm, pulsing softly under your fingers. Then a sound breaks through, faint but real, the first rooster call of morning. The dream begins to fade. The ship, the caravan, the endless roads all dissolve like dye in water. You open your eyes slowly to the dim light of the new day. The cat stretches. Nabium mumbles something in his sleep. The city is still quiet, as if holding its breath before waking. You lie still for a while, staring at the ceiling, feeling the faint ache in your arms and the dryness in your throat. Yet inside, you feel light, as though the dream left something behind, a sense that your threads do travel, that your work stretches farther than you can see. Outside, the first light touches the wall. You sit up, brush the dust from your tunic, and stand. Another day waits, another weave, another story. You glance once more at Nabium, and your mother, still asleep, then step quietly into the courtyard. The loom stands ready, shadowed but familiar. The dye jars glimmer faintly, catching the first golden spark of sunrise. The world beyond Babylon may remain unseen, but in your hands it is always near. The morning light creeps through the narrow gaps in the courtyard wall, painting thin golden lines across the ground. You move slowly, letting the air warm your skin. After the dream of distant lands, waking feels softer, as if time itself has slowed to match your breath. Nabium stirs from his mat, his hair a wild nest of curls. He blinks sleepily and asks if today will be another long day. He groans but grins, rubbing his eyes. You hand him a bowl of water, and he washes his face before starting to gather the leftover threads from yesterday's dyeing. The courtyard smells faintly of burnt oil, damp wool, and smoke from nearby hearths. The loom waits silently, its threads glowing softly in the morning light. Before you begin, you take a small clay bowl and fill it with oil from a jug. This is your morning offering, the quiet ritual that begins every day. You place the bowl near the small shrine in the corner, a few stones stacked to form a tiny altar, with a faint symbol carved into the top one. It represents your household gods, the guardians of work and patience. You light a thin wick in the oil and whisper a few words of thanks. The flame flickers, sending soft light across the wall. Historians still argue whether every home in Babylon kept such private altars, or if it was a luxury of the devout. For you, it is neither luxury nor superstition. It is habit, the same kind as tightening the loom or mixing dye. A way to remind yourself that the day's rhythm belongs to something larger than you. Nabium kneels beside you, copying your motion with awkward seriousness. He mumbles his own prayer, mixing the words. You smile quietly, pretending not to hear his mistakes. The gods, you think, forgive the young more easily. Once the flame steadies, you return to the loom. The serpent pattern is nearly finished now, its body winding beautifully across the fabric. Only a few rows remain. Nabium hands you the spindles, one by one, each thread the right shade of red and gold. The sound of the shuttle moving through the warp returns, soft, steady, hypnotic. The rhythm is so familiar that you no longer need to think about it. Your hands move by memory alone. The day unfolds slowly. The heat builds again, pressing down on the courtyard, but the work keeps you steady. The overseer's words from 2 days ago linger in your mind. Perfection pleases the gods, but arrogance does not. You do not seek perfection for them, only for the satisfaction of seeing the cloth finished without flaw. By midday, the final thread passes through. You press it gently, tie the end, and step back. The cloth hangs complete now, a long, shimmering panel of color, alive with pattern and depth. The serpent coils gracefully, its head raised, eyes gleaming faintly where the red meets gold. Nabiam gasps when he sees it fully. It looks alive, he whispers. You nod. Then it will please the priests. You cut the finished cloth from the loom and lay it carefully on the ground. The surface ripples slightly in the breeze, catching the light. For a moment, the courtyard feels like a temple itself, quiet, golden, still. You take a deep breath. The satisfaction of completion carries a strange peace with it, the kind of calm that feels like silence after music. Nabiam reaches out to touch the cloth, but you stop him gently. Let it rest, you say. Work needs silence before it travels. He nods, though he does not fully understand. After the meal, you prepare to deliver it to the temple. You fold the cloth with slow precision, aligning the edges until it forms a perfect square. Then you wrap it in linen, tie it with string, and set it in a wicker basket. Nabiam watches every move carefully, as if this moment holds a kind of magic. In truth, it does. The walk to the temple takes you through streets alive with noise. Merchants shout, children chase goats, priests chant in distant courtyards. The air smells of incense and dust. You keep your eyes on the ziggurat ahead, its shadow falling long across the city. The guards at the gate know you by now. One of them nods and waves you through without question. Inside the temple courtyard, the air changes. It feels thicker, cooler, almost heavy. The sound of chanting fills the space, echoing from the stone walls. You approach the overseer, who waits near the steps, his robe spotless as always. When he sees the basket, his expression softens slightly. You have finished early, he says. You bow your head. The threads behaved well. He unwraps the cloth and holds it up to the light. The serpent glows like fire, every scale woven with precision. He nods slowly. The priests will approve, he says, almost to himself. Then, louder, you have done well. The temple will send oil and grain as payment by dusk. You bow again, feeling both relief and exhaustion. Nabiam stands behind you, eyes wide, barely breathing. Bella too notices him and smiles faintly. Your apprentice watches well. He says, that is the first step toward mastery. Nabiam straightens, pride shining in his face. The overseer dismisses you with a nod. You turn to leave, your hands empty now, the basket light. The walk home feels longer, slower, yet your steps are easy. The city seems softer under the afternoon light. When you return, your mother greets you with a bowl of cool water. She knows without asking that the delivery went well. You wash your hands and face, watching the red dye fade slowly from your skin. The stains will remain for days, a quiet reminder of work completed. As the sun lowers, you light another small lamp at the altar. The flame catches quickly, its reflection glowing against the wall. You whisper a short prayer, not for wealth or glory, only for steady hands and peaceful nights. Historians often write that Babylonians prayed to countless gods for everything: harvests, rain, luck, and fortune. But you think most prayers are simple. People pray for time, for calm, for rhythm that does not break. The courtyard cools as the stars appear. Nabium lies on his mat, already half asleep. Your mother hums softly while preparing the next day's bread. The cat stretches near the wall. The loom stands empty now, waiting. You lie down beside the wall, feeling the day finally loosen its grip. The flame flickers gently, casting soft light on the clay floor. The cloth now rests in the temple, but its rhythm still hums faintly inside your chest. Work and prayer are the same. You think both are ways of holding the world steady for another day. The night deepens. The oil burns low. You close your eyes, whisper a final word of thanks, and let the stillness take you. Morning returns quietly, the same as always. A faint orange light seeps into the courtyard, brushing the walls, catching the edges of the loom. The air feels heavy with calm. You sit beside the empty frame, your hands resting on your knees, the wood cool beneath your fingers. For the first time in many days, the loom has nothing to say. No rhythm, no creak, no breath. Only silence. Nabium stumbles in, his eyes still half closed. He looks at the loom and frowns. It feels strange, he says softly. Quiet. You nod. The loom sleeps today. He tilts his head. Do looms dream? You almost laugh, but the question lingers. Yes, you say at last. They dream of unfinished work. The boy nods as if that makes perfect sense, then sets about sweeping the floor. The dust rises gently, glowing in the early light. You stand and stretch your back, feeling the familiar stiffness that has become part of your body. Each joint remembers the long hours. Each muscle carries the memory of the loom's pull. The work leaves marks that never fade. Historians still argue whether craftsmen like you were honored or forgotten. The tablets tell of kings and scribes, of temples and laws, but rarely of those who built, carved, or wove. You think about that as you sit, tracing the grooves in the wood where your father's hands once rested. His marks are still here, small dents, worn smooth by time. You wonder if your own will last long enough for Nabium to notice when you are gone. Outside the wall, the city stirs awake. The familiar sounds return: the call of the baker selling morning bread, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the cry of water carriers near the canal. Babylon breathes again, always steady, always the same. Yet to you, it feels a little slower today, a little quieter. You take a small basket of thread scraps and begin sorting them, a habit you learned from your mother. Some threads are too short to use, some knotted, some still smooth. You untangle them patiently, one by one. Nabium stops sweeping and joins you, curious. Why not throw them away? He asks. You shake your head. Every thread remembers the hand that spun it. To waste them would be rude. He nods slowly, his face serious, though he probably does not yet understand. The two of you work side by side, sorting, rolling, tying. The motion is gentle, soothing. The pile grows smaller. The sound of the loom's absence becomes its own kind of rhythm. A memory drifts through your mind, your first day as an apprentice. You remember your own master, old and stooped, his voice low but steady. He had told you, the loom teaches patience before it teaches skill. You had not believed him then. You had thought weaving was only about thread and pattern. But years later, you know he was right. The loom has taught you how to listen, how to breathe, how to exist without hurry. You glance at Nabium, bent over his task, tongue poking out slightly as he concentrates. He is still clumsy, still impatient, but his hands are steadier than before. You can already see the weaver he will become, perhaps faster, perhaps wiser, perhaps both. The thought brings a quiet warmth that words cannot hold. The air in the courtyard grows warmer as the sun climbs higher. Your mother calls softly from the doorway, asking if you will visit the market today. You nod. The cloth at the temple will bring good trade. There might be new work waiting, perhaps from a merchant, perhaps from another household. The rhythm continues. Before leaving, you take one last look at the loom. Its frame catches the light, golden along the edges. The worn pegs, the smooth bars, the faint stains from dye. Each mark tells a story. The loom has seen everything. Your first mistake, your first success, your father's last cloth. It has held the sound of laughter and silence alike. You rest your hand on the wood for a moment, as though saying goodbye to an old friend. Historians sometimes describe Babylon as a city built on stone and glory. But standing here, you know it was built on patience. Every brick, every pot, every thread carries the same weight of quiet work. You smile faintly. The weight of the world is in the small things. You whisper. Nabium looks up, puzzled, but you do not explain. Some truths are better learned through time. You step out into the sunlight. The streets glow with dust and movement. Merchants arrange their stalls. Women carry baskets of figs, and children chase dogs through the alleys. The noise rises slowly, weaving into the day's pattern. You walk through it all, a quiet thread moving among louder colors. When you reach the canal, you pause to watch the water flow. Its surface glints like polished silk. Boats move lazily downstream, carrying goods to distant towns. For a moment, you imagine that somewhere among those baskets and jars lies another of your fabrics, folded and ready for trade. The thought makes you stand taller. A fisherman nearby waves at you, showing off a large catch. You wave back, smiling. Life here feels eternal, not because it never changes, but because it repeats with grace. Every dawn, every market, every sound echoes the one before. The same way the loom repeats its rhythm, never tired, never bored. You return home before the sun reaches its peak. Nabium has cleaned the courtyard, and the air smells faintly of oil and bread. Your mother hums as she kneads dough. The cat sleeps in the shade. Everything feels as it should. Simple, whole, alive. You sit again beside the loom, not to work, but to rest. The silence feels right now, like the pause between songs. The threads you sorted earlier sit neatly in a basket by your feet. You pick one up and roll it slowly between your fingers, feeling its texture, its lightness, its quiet strength. This is what the world is made of. You think not stone or metal or fire, but small things twisted together until they hold. The city, the people, the gods, even time itself, all bound by invisible threads that never truly end. The light softens, turning the courtyard golden once more. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the faint hum of life beneath everything. The loom, though silent, still speaks in its own way. And in that silence, you hear the whole city breathing with you. The night returns like a quiet visitor, slipping softly through the open roof of your courtyard. The air feels cooler, clean, after the heat of the day. You sit beside the empty loom, your shadow long and still against the wall. Nabium sleeps nearby, curled under a thin cloth, his clay bird charm resting against his chest. The oil lamp burns low, its flame small but steady. You can hear the soft sounds of Babylon resting, a distant dog barking once, a pot shifting in someone's kitchen, the faint lapping of the canal water against its stone edge. The city that never truly sleeps hums faintly beneath it all. You are not working tonight. There is no need. The cloth has been delivered. The overseer has given his approval. And the temple priests have begun their preparations for the festival. Somewhere in the great courtyard of Marduk's temple, your cloth hangs already, perhaps draped over the altar or wrapped around a statue of a god. The thought fills you with a warmth deeper than pride. It feels like completion. Still, you cannot quite rest. Your fingers trace the edge of the loom as if it were a friend's shoulder. The wood feels cool now, no longer warm from your touch. You can still feel the faint grooves where you carved marks to count days, projects, and memories. The loom waits in silence, ready to begin again when the sun returns. Your mother's voice drifts softly from the next room as she whispers her prayers. You hear her thank the gods for another safe day, for food, for shelter, and for the family that still breathes under one roof. The words blend into the night air, humble and rhythmic, as if they too were part of the loom's forgotten song. You stretch your legs and look up through the roof opening. The stars shimmer in their usual pattern. They look the same as they did when you were a child, lying beside your father as he told you stories about the sky. He used to say the stars were holes in the roof of the world, letting the light of eternity shine through. You had believed him then. A small part of you still does. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians truly read fate in those stars or merely used them to mark the seasons. You smile faintly. Either way, they shine on everyone the same, kings, priests, and weavers alike. The sky is the only thing that treats every soul equally. The oil lamp flickers, its flame bending low before rising again. You add a few drops of oil, watching it regain strength. The light glows softly on Nabium's sleeping face, his expression peaceful, unburdened. You think of how the world will change for him. New looms, new patterns, new rulers. Yet the rhythm will stay. It always does. You walk quietly to the small shrine in the corner. The clay stones look faint in the lamplight. You pour a little oil into the bowl and bow your head. You whisper a few words of gratitude. Not for wealth, not for glory, only for work that continues, hands that still move, and threads that still find their path. You sit again, leaning back against the wall. The loom's shadow stretches across the courtyard like a sleeping animal. You close your eyes and listen. The faint hum of the city, the soft breath of the boy, the heartbeat of your own chest. All of it weaves together into something quiet, something whole. The first sound of dawn comes before you expect it. A single rooster's cry, then another, echoing down the alley. You smile softly. The darkness begins to lift, not quickly, but gently, like the opening of an eye. The stars fade one by one. The horizon glows pale blue. You feel the cool air brushing your face, carrying the scent of wet clay and smoke from distant hearths. You stand, stretching your arms, feeling the familiar ache of work return even before it begins. Nabiam stirs and mumbles in his sleep. You let him rest a little longer. Soon he will wake to fetch water, and you will check the loom once more. The rhythm of life begins again, slow and certain. The light grows stronger. The city murmurs awake. You hear sandals scuffing on stone, the creak of doors, the splash of water from the canal. A woman sings faintly as she kneads bread. Somewhere far off, a temple bell rings, calling the priests to morning prayer. The world resumes its endless weave, one day folded gently into the next. You run your fingers over the wood one last time before the day begins, whispering to the loom as if it can hear you. You and I, you say quietly, we will begin again. The sun edges over the wall, spilling its first light into the courtyard. The loom glows gold for a moment, alive once more. You breathe deeply, feeling the warmth of the day arriving. The threads will hum again, the pattern will grow again, and the city will move to the same eternal rhythm. Babylon never stops. It only pauses between breaths. You smile, lift the spindle from the shelf, and begin winding the first new thread. The light now rests softly across the courtyard, the air warm but gentle. You sit quietly beside the loom, the work waiting patiently, untouched for a few moments more. The sound of the morning grows fainter as your mind slows, every thought unspooling like a soft thread. The city beyond your walls fades into a calm hum, distant, steady, unhurried. The river flows somewhere far away, carrying the reflection of the sky. You imagine the sound of water against stone, the slow rhythm of boats moving downstream. The same rhythm fills your chest, slow and even, like breathing without effort. You think of the threads you have woven, how they stretch into the world, how each one holds a fragment of peace. The air smells faintly of oil and dust. The cat stretches in its corner. Nabiam mumbles something in his sleep, a dream that will vanish with the sun. You lean your head back and close your eyes. The weight of the day ahead feels lighter than before. The loom, the cloth, the work, all wait quietly, as if they, too, are resting. You take a slow breath, letting it linger in your chest before releasing it. The morning feels endless, wide as the sky. The threads of your life, the laughter, the silence, the rhythm, are all woven together now, perfect and complete. The world drifts, the sound softens, and the moment settles into stillness. The loom remains beside you, silent but alive, holding the memory of every motion. The day has begun again, calm and certain. Sleep now, gentle listener. Let the hum of Babylon fade. Let the river carry your thoughts, and let your mind rest in the quiet rhythm of the loom.